Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Rangers Review morning briefing for Wednesday, the 3rd of May. I'm Derek Clark, and I'm joined this lovely spring morning by Joshua Barrie. How are we doing, Joshua?
Good. Not quite as springy in Glasgow, Derek, a bit grey, but looks like nice. It's nice down your way, so lucky you.
Yeah. The sun is shining, so better get the factor 50 applied before too long. But let's talk all things Rangers, folks. Before we do that, just a quick word for our podcast sponsors. You know these guys by now. Seneca Hair Restoration. If you're looking for a hair transplant, then these are the guys to go to. A few funny quips from people yesterday with regards to Seneca, but and Johnny saying that Fashion Sakala should form part of the rebuild, which tickled me. But listen, these are the guys to go to, folks, if that is something that you're thinking of. As ever, I've put all the all-important links in the description box, so do go and check them out in your own time if that is something that you're looking to do at somewhere in the future. Right, let's talk Rangers. Couple of pieces on the website this morning, Joshua, which we'll touch on. Cannot believe it's 1 year to the day since we lost Jimmy Bell. His sudden passing, I think, shook everyone. He was an absolute icon of the football club. There's no doubt about it. There's a piece on the website this morning, folks, that we've made free for all as well. We've spoken to a number of individuals who came across Jimmy during their time at Ibrox, the likes of Charlie Miller, Stephen Boyack, Colin Miller, who was there back in the 80s when he was a bus driver. We've also spoken to Calvin Bassey, Michael Beale, and Tommy Moller-Nielsen as well. So great stories in there. I do urge you to go and check it out. Josh has put the link in the description box. Thanks for doing that. It really is a brilliant tribute from all the people that we spoke to. And just a sad loss, isn't it, Joshua? I think we're still feeling it to this day. It wasn't just the bus driver and then the kit man. He was much more than that, wasn't he? And he stood for the high standards that Rangers strive for. And he's sadly missed.
Yeah, we'll obviously go into the piece because lots of fantastic stories in there, Derek. And as you say, free to read. So it's on the socials. It's in the comment section as well. I think people like Jimmy Bell are so rare when you speak to people about him, when you hear stories about him, because of the respect that he was held in by so many people, of the way that he did his job, the importance he put into that, and of the significance of people like him in football clubs like Rangers. You know, I think, as is said in the piece, Jimmy Bell obviously never pulled on a shirt for Rangers and played, and yet he is a club legend, someone that's kind of so significant. And I thought right from the kind of early stories right up until hearing what Beale and Bassey had to say about him, there was a line that Beale said speaking about the Glenn Kamara celebration and kind of just saying how poignant that was. And, you know, it's a year, obviously, today since losing Jimmy Bell. It's a year on Friday since that Leipzig win. And that celebration was so poignant. And you know, Glenn Kamara, as Beale said in the piece, someone who a completely different upbringing to Jimmy Bell. He grew up in obviously in England compared to Jimmy Bell in Scotland, but he just had this way of relating to people, I think, and an ability to take players under his wing, like a Bassey or a Kamara, or really any number, I think. And I can't remember, I think it was maybe Colin Miller in the piece that says he speaks for 99.9% of everyone that worked with him. Charlie Miller, and I think that sums it up. What stood out to you writing it? Because, you know, some fantastic stories in there that I think sum up just how significant he was kind of as a figure.
Yeah, I mean, there's a range of diverse stories in there. Everyone pretty much loved the guy. And it's brilliant to hear that because you're hearing that from, like you say, Joshua, guys like Calvin Bassey comes from a completely different background to Jimmy Bell, but he loved him. Colin Miller, as I mentioned, Charlie Miller, everyone loved him. And that's despite him being a moaner at times, as Tommy Moller-Nielsen said to me. It was a fight and a struggle to try and get things off him in his kit room. Charlie Miller said it was like Aladdin's cave in there, and it was almost you had to have a square go to get a pair of boots or any strips out of him. But he was really fondly remembered by everyone there. And it was some cracking tales in there, folks. He was a bit of a joker as well. And little did I know, Charlie told me that he used to lift weights back in the day as well. So he was a strong guy, which you never quite envisaged at the time. That wasn't really broadcasting. But I mean, Charlie loved him. He said that. I didn't realise that he loved Ian Durrant as well. Stephen Boyack says that he was his bestie. He was only one that could give Jimmy cheek and could slag him off, and he wouldn't get a clip round the ear. So things like if they're on the team bus and Jimmy would have the tunes blaring, he'd have a CD, a cassette that he would like to play all the Rangers tunes going to games, and he'd turn out. Stephen Boyack says Durrant would say face the front driver, and then he would just give him a lot of cheek and all that heading to game. So I was buckled laughing at that, to be honest. And he was absolutely magnificent, and a huge loss. Like we said, he's not just an employee of the club, but Michael Beale said he's a custodian. Yeah. I think he said as well a nice line that Beale said was he was a sort of guardian of the training ground. He was there pretty much all the time. Rangers was his life, he's really sadly missed by everyone. So I do urge you to go and check it out, folks. It's a cracking piece in there, and like I said, we've made it free for everyone to have a read at it. 12 months ago to the day, I think it shook everyone. I know I was shocked when I heard the news, because like Charlie said, he told me he thought that Jimmy would live until he was 100. He thought he was indestructible. He just seemed to be part of, well, Calvin says he was part of the furniture at Rangers, and it's right. When you think of Rangers, you thought of Jimmy Bell. So big miss, absolutely. So do go and check it out, folks, if you've got a little bit of time today. That is one of the pieces on the website this morning. There's another piece as well in there, from Johnny, the newsletter from last night. He's just touching on the Rangers 6 that can supplement Beale's huge transfer influx, the 6 players that he would keep around as part of the Michael Beale rebuild. Of course, biggest rebuild in years, that he said in the summer. So 2 fantastic pieces on the website, folks. I'd urge you to go and have a read. Lots of comments coming in. I'll get to a few of them. Lovely little pieces on Jimmy. Francis says, morning everyone, fantastic article, Derek. Thanks very much, Francis. Jimmy Bell is sorely missed, a true Rangers man. Most definitely. And Ian Campbell says Jimmy travelled with the team, did not just take care of a while in Ibrox. He certainly did. Very much a legend. And Charlie said as well that he may not have pulled on the blue jersey, but he was regarded just as highly as he would have as being a player as well. So fantastic stuff. Let's get to a few of the comments that are coming in here. First of all, Stuart McLean says, good to hear you, Joshua, on Radio Scotland this morning, talking all things Rangers. Just on Seneca, here, restoration of podcast sponsors. Mitchell says, shame Seneca can't do team restoration. Then there's an interesting point as well. Other big news yesterday, Joshua, I wanted to touch on was the parting of the ways with Rangers have parted company with Craig Mulholland, the Academy Director. Now, there's a few comments coming in with regards to this. Let's touch on these. DK says, Derek, can please discuss why Mulholland is leaving the day before the youth final? Should we be worried about so many senior people leaving? Of course, this comes off the back of Stuart Robertson leaving in the summer. James Bisgrove has been appointed as chief executive. Of course, we've got a new chairman in at the moment as well. And certainly changes are afoot behind the scenes. I'll just read you some of the comments with regards to Mulholland leaving yesterday. He said, I have loved my 20 years working at the club that I had grown up with, and in particular the last 8 leading our academy, B team and women's teams. However, in all leadership positions, sometimes knowing when the right time to move on is as important as deciding which opportunities to take. My successor will inherit some fantastic people working passionately to deliver on a clear strategic vision underpinned by strong processes and modern innovative methodology. They will also inherit some outstanding young talents, which will lead to an exciting future for the club and the academy over the next few years. I am immensely proud of all we have achieved, and I would like to thank John, Stuart, James, and all the current and previous board members for their fantastic support, and wish Michael and his staff all the very best for the future. Above all, I would like to thank each and every one of the young players who drive our motivation and energy every single day. James Bisgrove said, on behalf of the board, I would like to sincerely thank Craig as he moves on, having transformed our academy into one which is on a par and even exceeds many clubs in Europe's biggest leagues. Craig will leave the club with a fantastic legacy, which includes the professionalisation of our women's programme, being a leader in B teams, being introduced into senior Scottish football, creating our Beauclair Academy Performance School, and having brought in over £15 million in academy player sales in the last 5 years. Together with Michael Beale, John Bennett and the board, I will now lead a thorough process to identify his replacement as we continue a wide-ranging transformation of all areas of the football club, which I thought was telling, that line there, Joshua. What do you make of this? On the eve of the Youth Cup final tonight, which you are attending a little later on, big news.
Yeah, I mean, obviously not leaving until the end of the season, so I wouldn't read anything into the fact that it's today. I think the key line there, Derek, is what wide-ranging transformation is that the term that was used? I mean, that's kind of doesn't leave any stone unturned, does it? And I think we've seen that ever since Douglas Park stepped down, which was expected at some point. Obviously now Ross Wilson, Stuart Robertson, and Craig Mulholland. The James Bisgrove alongside John Bennett, Michael Beale, I think, as Johnny mentioned last week, all people who have been in the club before, who have been in as first team coach or as head of marketing or as a vice chairman, but now they're stepping up into these key roles. They're the chairman, the CEO instead of the managing director and the manager. And I think very much what you're seeing, Derek, is, as we've discussed, the season is over in May. That isn't successful, that's failure. And I think off the pitch, the judgment is always cast by what happens on it. Now, I don't think that necessarily applies directly to Craig Mulholland because that's a first team matter. I think there has been a relatively steady stream of academy products coming into the first team. You obviously look at the likes of Nathan Patterson as well, and the money that was brought in for him. The academy will be unrecognisable to what it was in 2015 when Mulholland came in there in the first place. Absolutely, 8 years later now, obviously leaves. But I think what you are seeing, Derek, is the change that's been muted for a while, or the feeling that there needs new faces, new figureheads to drive forward the next iteration of this project is all happening at once. And we've all been speaking about a rebuild on the pitch, which is happening, and Michael Beale's confirmed that on Sunday, saying it'll be the biggest rebuild seen in a number of years. But now, evidently, transformation, to quote the new CEO or the to-be CEO, is happening off the pitch as well. And to look back on what John Bennett said when James Bisgrove was announced as the to-be CEO in the summer, he said he was going to have the energy and whatever to implement step change in the club. So the word has changed, definitely. That will be intentional, I'm sure, in all the press releases. Because I think for Bisgrove and Bennett and Beale to have this new project, there obviously needs to be a bit of a break from the past as well. And I guess that the fact that extends to the academy for whatever reason shows that, to again quote that statement, it's wide-ranging transformation, and there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes as well. So yeah, lots going on, and as mentioned, it's going to be a busy summer, not only on the pitch and getting that team built for Rangers, but also off it.
Yeah, lots of comments coming in. A few here. John Dooley says, do you hear the rumour about an American takeover of Rangers? And Jamie echoes that. Allegedly, there's massive investment coming from the US. Like you two, yes, I've heard of murmurings of that, but nothing concrete as yet. But listen, I think any investment would be welcome into the club. I think that that'll be something that I'm sure John Bennett and the board behind the scenes we're looking to increase the amount of money that is coming into the club. But a lot of change behind the scenes at the moment. Very interesting indeed. It'll be interesting to see who comes in as the academy director. Just on the back of that, Joshua, Thomas McCrimmon says, what do you think of Bisgrove? Does he have the minerals, acumen to lead Rangers to success? Myself and Johnny were on last week when the news broke that he was taking over as the new CEO with Stuart Robertson leaving as managing director in the summer. We got his take on it. Joshua, what do you feel about James Bisgrove? Of course, relatively inexperienced in that role, but he's shown as a commercial and marketing director that he has a lot of potential about him. He's done well. He's hit the targets that he's been asked to hit in that role. I think natural progression is in that role, and I'm quite excited to see how he gets on. I've got to say, I think he's very approachable. I like the fact that he's going to be holding pretty regular fan meetings, which is good. I think communication has to improve at Rangers, and he talks a good game. I'm quite excited to see how he gets on.
Yeah, and I think the not only the title of CEO, Derek, but the fact that he is holding those meetings is proof that communication will not only increase, but I think Bisgrove will very much be that figurehead, which Rangers haven't always had in the last few seasons. We spoke when Ross Wilson left about the fact that when Gerrard's departure was announced to Aston Villa, it was Wilson that kind of did the big interview, and he was the figure of continuity. And there has been so much change in the last 3 years, from when Steven Gerrard left to Gio leaving, to Beale coming back, to the new chairman. And throughout that, there perhaps hasn't been, especially with Ross Wilson leaving, and the fact that he wasn't really that public figurehead over the last, I guess, year of his time at the club, year and a half. There hasn't been that kind of figurehead of continuity. I think Bisgrove will offer that, certainly from a public point of view. Good talker, obviously has a really good track record, has done a really good job at Rangers behind the scenes, growing the commercial department. It's easy to forget just how I guess undeveloped that was when he arrived at the club in 2019 compared to where it is now, hopefully with a lot more potential, and exceeding that target of, what was it, 27.9 million, which I think they managed to exceed as well. So I think the importance of having a figurehead in there can't really be understated. It's interesting that he's a CEO instead of a managing director. I think that points to change, obviously, in the role as well. And now it's up to him to, along with, I think, that communication that will aid him, and these staff changes that signify a break and a new change to really make the most of that fresh start in the summer, because Rangers shouldn't be in this position come May 2023, given where they were this time last year. This time last year they hadn't even played the second leg of the Europa League final. Obviously, this time 2 seasons ago they'd already lifted the league title, and I think all the change, whether that be on the pitch and the talk of rebuilding to get certain players who can take them where they want to be and off it as well, all signifies that the change needs to happen, because it has ultimately been a really unsuccessful season ever since, as we keep going back to that PSV game at the back end of August. Long time ago.
Yeah, it went downhill hugely from then. PSV have won the cup double over there as well. Ruud van Nistelrooy doing a good job over there. Right, let's get to a few of the comments. Really interesting ones coming in here. Just about the potential American investment that's doing the rounds. Kev says, Donald Trump was in Scotland yesterday. Make Rangers great again. It would be quite something if Donald Trump was to invest in Rangers, I've got to say, Joshua. It would certainly make press conferences rather interesting. But yeah, of course he has that Scottish connection. He's back on these bonny shores up at Aberdeen at his golf course, of course. So who knows?
I'd rather not, Derek. I think that's unlikely.
Well, money's money at the end of the day. If you can fund a new centre forward, then I'm all for it, I've got to say. Graham Mitchell says, "Morning, guys. Makes you think who's going to leave next. I would like Kevin Thompson to replace him." I think he means Craig Mulholland. I wouldn't have no qualms about that, I've got to say. I know Kev, he's got his own coaching school at the moment. He has been at Ibrox before, working in the academy and what have you. But as I mentioned, I think it will be interesting who Rangers will look to replace him. There's a number of positions that they'll look to fill, isn't there, Joshua? The sporting director one, or if you like, sporting director of or director of football, whatever you like to call it. That's going to be an interesting one. I think that is a crucial one for me in the summertime, that Rangers get someone in. Now, I know it's important to take your time over it. You don't want to recruit the wrong guy. But with Michael Beale on record saying it's going to be the biggest rebuild in years, ideally you want someone there overseeing all that change.
Yeah, well, and it doesn't sound like that's going to happen until the summer. All the noises that Michael Beale's obviously made in press conferences and the emphasis that he's put on him being front and centre of recruitment. Now, we know that, again, as he's disclosed, and I think in numerous press conferences, that it's not just a case of him picking all the players. There's one less person now in Ross Wilson there, but the recruitment team obviously will be working closely alongside him to identify players for the summer. You'd imagine long term there's going to be a person in that position, purely because every big club really now in Europe and the world has a director of football, Derek. So I definitely think that's a necessity going forward. Yeah,
most definitely. Just on the academy, because some interesting points coming in with regards to that. Stephen Smith raises one. Unfortunately, not one academy player has managed to hold down a first-team place. That needs to change. And just on the back of that, Billy, morning, Billy, to be fair, how many youth players have stepped up to the first team? Patterson, King, Lowry, any more? It's an interesting point, and I think a pretty valid one, Joshua. Rangers, it's pretty notorious that, it's really difficult to make that step up from the youth team through the ranks into the first team. The one that stands out, of course, many years ago is Barry Ferguson, who went on to captain the club and cement his place in that first team. Alan McGregor, of course, is another that's in the team at the moment. Of course, his career dwindling down. But there's not too many more, you've got to say, in the current squad just now. I know that Nathan Patterson came in. Rangers got a hefty fee for him, but likes of King, Alex Lowry, I think we need to see more of. I think the jury's out whether they can cement their place in the first team, but it's certainly an issue, isn't it, that Rangers will... everyone likes to see one of their own, you can speak for every club, one of their own making the step up from the youth ranks into the first team. But I think the supporters want to see a bit more young players coming through and making their mark in the senior side. Well,
yeah, but I think there's a danger as well in just looking at say a B team and saying only 2 players have made it from that. Obviously, only a small number of players from any academy setup are going to make it into the first team, and that extends to every club. When was the last time you've seen a club at any level have a team full of B team players? It's rare. There's maybe exceptions where that happens more regularly than others, and there's a culture that encourages that. I think at the moment you have obviously Patterson as the main kind of demonstration of a player that has stepped up into the first team. Lowry and King and Devine, I think, have all shown that they're good enough to be first team players. They've not held consistent positions down for all that long. But you obviously look at Leon King, I think he played the most minutes of any under 21, any player under the age of 21 in the Champions League this season. Difficult campaign, admittedly. Adam Devine, who stepped up and played 3 games in the bounce in the absence of Borna Barisic out of position. Alex Lowry, whose talent is not in question at all, but it's just, I think, been a question of timing and injuries and other things. And you'd hope that this summer will be a good one for him to be really a part of what Beale is creating going forward. So, of course, you want as many academy products to be in the first team as possible. I think Rangers have produced that in recent years. I don't think it's helped that there's been 3 managers in the last 3 years, and that maybe doesn't necessarily aid to first team players getting into academy players getting into the first team. And I think that's why as well a director of football is important to oversee that whole process as well. But it'll be interesting to see who comes in next. I'm sure that, especially because of the homegrown quota, the likes of King and unless there's loan deals, King and Devine and Lowry will be a part of things next season. We just need to wait and see who their who they're joined by of the current first team squad. I think Johnny's article, I've not got the 6 names in front of me that he touches upon, aside from Tav Goldson, Cantwell and Raskin, but there's going to be a few alongside those, of course, that stay. It's not going to be a case of 20 players going out the door and 20 players coming in, and it's going to be really interesting to see who Beale thinks can be a success with a bit more energy next to them, who from the current squad he fancies, and who he is going to move on come the summer.
Yeah, he was getting a bit of stick yesterday, Johnny, when he said that Fashion Sakala should be involved as part of the rebuild. But listen, it's all about opinions. That's why we love this game.
I think Sakala's an interesting one because he obviously did have, up until really Aberdeen away, been pretty promising away from home. And you think of that Hibs game, for example, or away at Hearts, or Kilmarnock. I think a number of games he was quite effective away from home. Equally, Rangers were in a position where the last Scottish Cup semi-final last season, they were bringing on Scott Arfield and Fashion Sakala to try and impact the game. And it was the same situation. For one reason or another, injuries, yes, we can go through it, and we've went through it all season. But it was the same players coming on to try and impact the game. The thing is, Derek, there's, I guess, a bit of a danger of being too reactionary to a result like the weekend. But equally, I think there's a danger in not being reactionary enough to a result like the weekend, if that makes sense. Because ultimately, for Rangers to be a success, for Beale to be a success, for the next squad to be a success, those games, you need to fall on the right side of those margins. You need to bring players off the bench who are going to decide Old Firm, be able to help decide Old Firm games for you, or more crucially, have players starting in the final third who are going to be able to impact that game. I mean, I can't remember how many times we turned around to one another at the game on Sunday and maybe had Raskin driving forward from midfield, or some promise from Cantwell, but there just was not enough ahead of them to make you confident that a goal was going to come. So for those, when you're discussing the likes of Fashion Sakala's future, I think things like Sunday do change it, because A, Beale said that these games would shape futures, but B, he knows that regardless of outside of Old Firms, if he can make a team that wins these difficult away games and can rack up wins domestically, he needs players that are going to make the differences in the Old Firm when it comes round. And Sakala obviously wasn't able to do that at the weekend. And I think that's going to be a big judger for him going into the summer. Who does he think, who can he rely upon to go and impact a game like the one on Sunday? And that's obviously going to really inform what happens both outgoing and incoming in the summer.
Yeah, it certainly will be. Just touching on the Youth Cup final this evening, Andrew Smith says it is on TV. I believe it's on BBC Scotland, if I'm not mistaken. I've seen it is on TV, Andrew, so you will be able to watch it, and hopefully the young Bears can do the business over Celtic tonight and lift that trophy. Great occasion for them at Hampden. Joshua will be there for us watching on. And yeah, it's always usually a good occasion, these Youth Cup finals. And
they won it last year as well. So a trophy to retain. So yeah, looking forward to it, and we'll have coverage from it as well at the game. So if you're not watching it, we'll have you covered.
Fantastic stuff. Just a couple of interesting points I just wanted to touch on here. Lennox says it's a catch-22 situation with the youth. If we play them for the remainder of the season just to appease the fans and get beat, then Beale will get grief. I think there is a balancing act. Now, I know that the last 5 games don't mean anything in the grand scheme of things, but he's right in a way. I would like to see wholesale changes, but at the end of the day, you don't want to be losing the next 2 games in particular, Joshua. I think the Celtic game, and I know that there's nothing riding on it. Well, Celtic, if they slip up at Tynecastle, could win the league at Ibrox, so that should be motivation enough. I think he needs to get one over Celtic, doesn't he, Beale? So I think that might skew his thinking with regards to team selection for the next 2 games at least.
Yeah, but I also don't think there's much, Are you going to start Bailey Rice and Zach Lovelace against Aberdeen? Is that the right environment to throw them into when you could be?
I think, see, Aberdeen, I think, I understand where you're coming from, and he's coming off the back of 2 back-to-back defeats, isn't he? But
it's a big pressure situation to put players in who haven't ever started for the first team. I think what's more likely is, as you see with the game, what was it, Tynecastle, the final league game of last season, where you saw Devine start, you saw Cole McKinnon and McCausland come off the bench, and Lowry obviously played off the left that day and scored a fantastic goal. I think that's more likely maybe in the last couple of games, but we can say sitting now these games don't mean anything, and they don't. The league's gone, silverware's gone. In isolation, they don't. But also at the game on Saturday, people will obviously still want Rangers to win, and Beale will of course be under pressure going into that Old Firm. But just to build as little optimism as you can, which is minimal from these 5 games, admittedly. But there's always a little bit, I think, to be gained. Does Bailey Rice and Zach Lovelace and others get some minutes? Does Robbie McCrory play up? Hopefully at some point he gets his opportunity. But you're right to say, Derek, that Rangers can't be going into that home game, that home Old Firm game with a team littered with youth players. I think there is questions over who plays. We need to see how Tillman is, obviously, after the weekend. Kent and Morelos, we've covered them extensively after the weekend as well. So there will be some changes, some opportunities, but it's still got to be a strong team, particularly looking into that Old Firm game.
Yeah, we always like a bit of comedy on the Rangers Review in the morning, and John Adams has stepped up with a great line here. Guard of honour for Celtic at Ibrox. Good one, John. We're not biting on that one. Never in a million years. Yeah. Pigs will fly before that happens, and Isla side, of course, but no chance. Terry Monroe, have you covered the Dowell signing? This is gathering pace, Joshua. This is Kieran Dowell of Norwich City. According to reports down in Norfolk at the moment, it appears that he will leave Carrow Road in the summer when his contract expires, and he's set to sign a 3-year deal, has been reported with Rangers. Not too sure how much you've seen of this lad. I've reported on him a few times when he was playing for Wigan, and I've got to say I was impressed. He was on loan from Everton. He got his move to Norwich City. He's a decent player. However, as with most Rangers signings, it seems these days he has a checkered past when it comes to injuries. He's been out with a knee injury of late. And that is a concern for me. Honestly, decent squad player. I would certainly welcome him to Ibrox, but there are concerns from some of the markets Rangers are shopping in and championship players down south, and whether that is good enough to fill the team to reclaim top spot in Scottish football. Kieran Dowell, for you on board?
Yeah, I think it was Scott McDermott in the Daily Record last week that said it was a 3-year deal that had been signed for Dowell. On the topic of, is it concerning if Rangers only look in certain markets? I guess we'll wait and see. I mean, Beale has said that, what was the comment, that there should almost be a thread of being able to see players he's worked with in the past. I guess it could be because it's very functioned around one manager. It could also work well and get short-term to medium-term, long-term results. Is a championship a concern? I mean, you look at obviously someone like Cantwell. There's going to be a lot of quality in that division as well. And there will be an element of, I guess, squad players that Rangers bring in. The important thing is that they get, 3, 4, 5, 6. If you think of Tavernier, Goldson, Cantwell and Raskin being 4 definite starters next season, I'd definitely have Tillman in there if that is to go through. You need,
I'm not sure,
4, 5, 6, 7 players who are going to be first team players and are going to be mainstays who you can build the core around and squad players around that. Are you saying you're not sure about Aaron Tillman there?
Yeah. Whether that's going to materialise, we need to remember as well, will the player fancy joining Rangers as well? It's all right saying I'll pay the money and then bring him in, but the player, as I say, as well, and I'm not entirely sure. I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't happen, put it this way. Yeah,
but I think that obviously it's a difficult
end. I think it makes sense, absolutely, for Rangers to bring him in, but it'll be interesting to see how that one unfolds. I don't think it's as clear-cut as some people are perhaps hoping.
Well, I think what's always been clear-cut is that ever since Michael Beale was coming from his first press conference in the friendly against Bayer Leverkusen, he said he wants to sign him. So that has always been clear-cut, but obviously a deal, yeah, you're right, it's always going to have complications. See Allen there staying, Ben Davies, I think he should stay. Has improved a lot. I thought he was really good at the weekend, Derek. Kept Kyogo pretty quiet, one of his better games. We just need to wait and see who Beale decides to move on. Does he fancy someone else there? Ultimately, we don't know, and we won't know until the summer. But yeah, Tillman, I know we've been over this ground many times, but to recant, I think that Rangers have lacked any big game players this season. Rangers have lacked a big game performance again since PSV.
Right, yeah.
I think when Tillman had those big performances in the Champions League qualifiers, I think if he was to come back next season and in a better functioning squad, then you would see him step up with bigger moments in Old Firm games. But yeah, as you say, we'll have to wait and see. There's a few players there to build around. There's a few players that really need to come in and be that core, that next spine of the squad to move Rangers forward. Yeah.
Listen, it'll be interesting to see the turnover that is about to take place. I think John Adams has felt bad about his Guard of Honour comment. So he's donated to the channel £1.99. Thanks very much for your donation, John. It is greatly appreciated. Old super chat function, I think it is. You can donate money to the channel. So thank you very much for doing so. And thank you to everyone for interacting with the show this morning, as ever. It's always greatly appreciated to talk all things Rangers with you guys. Big thanks to Joshua as well. We'll be back. Well, myself and Chris Jack should be on tomorrow morning, so we hope you can join us for that. Until then, I hope you enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. Bye for now.